Treeger's Enchanted Grove Ascent. The Feywild Valley breathes slowly. Bushes glow with a soft bioluminescence. Moss clings thick to roots and stone alike, warm beneath the hand. Leaves sway, though there is no wind, carrying the faint scent of rain and living greenery. Let's just go over the environment a little bit for a second. On level 1, there's kind of the grove floor. This is where the juvenile wolves are hanging out. The juvenile wolves will start at Unit 0, behind the little rock before the waterfall. Level 2 is the Heart Pond, where the Fey tree rises. There is a boulder, and this is what feeds the waterfall. Then there's a mossy wooden roof that leads up over what looks like a mine shaft essentially, but we're not discovering that quite yet. And then attached to that is a bridge that runs from the top of the tree to the face of the large rock. On top of this bridge near the tree is a moon orb that spins. It's golden, rotates, it's gorgeous, it's huge. And then finally there is a set of stairs that leads up to a very flat portion of this large rock. And on top of this flat portion there is a stone circle fire pit. It's all very mossy. There's another large grand tree that is on the far side of this, and it has some ropes tied from the top and then strung across, tied to the top of the ladder. It's all very enchanted and lush and ancient and beautiful. This is Treeger's forest. His presence is everywhere at once. In the bend of branches, the patience of vines, the subtle shift of soil beneath careless feet. High above the grove floor, the great protector tree spirit watches. His awareness threaded through bark and leaf. Standing in stealth and in the shadows, on top of rock, below him, a scene of obsidian and crimson unfolded. The two cultists that fled earlier were engaged in a low and frantic vote with a red dragonborn clad in black plate, who was flanked by two red ghouls that twitched with hunger, as the Feywild air couldn't soothe. Treeger's mossy ears caught the instruction. The summoning of the fire serpent was a deadline written in the stars, and it had to ignite before the moon's cold shadows finished its eclipse of the sun. At the heart of the valley, a sacred waterfall pours from the Heart Tree Pond down to the base of the grove. At the pond center rises an ancient Fey tree, roots drinking deep from the enchanted water. High in its crown, a narrow, living bridge of woven wood and vine stretches across the pond. Suspended above the falling water, slowly rotating, is a golden orb of condensed moonlight, humming softly, with resonance of celestial rhythm. Still and perched atop this bridge, before the moon orb, is the alpha werewolf, bathing in lunar glow. This orb feeds him power, each rotation tightening a ritual older than a memory. Packs of juvenile wolves run about the grove's forest floor. As they sense the eclipse, they prowl the undergrowth, glowing faintly with the Feywild energy, and forming the first obstacle for any who dare to interrupt the ceremonies. Now into the scene walks Ziggy, the Eladrin noble, with starlight in his marrow and his crimson lute, the poet, strapped to his back. He meets Treeger at the base of the falls. Treeger looked at the bard, a glint of ancient recognition shifting in the grain of his bark. He knew Ziggy's soul, though the old stump refused to spill the secret of how. With a voice like grinding tectonic plates, Treeger handed Ziggy a water skin. The mission was a high-stakes hustle. Ziggy has to collect the sacred waters from two specific pools, the shoreline and then the Heart Tree Pond, to douse the ritual flames before the serpent could fully manifest. With the mission understood, Treeger pledged his full loyalty to the Eladrin. ready to manipulate the undergrowth and project shimmering illusions to stall the coming hunt. So for game mechanics, I kind of adapted the D&D chase evasion rules a little bit, and I'm doing a little bit more of a mini game. How this works is basically there's a track from 0 to 50. At each 5 unit mark, there's a milestone. At each milestone, there are 2 paths that can be taken. So the first initial path after he meets Treegor, Ziggy has to choose between either trying to scramble over the jagged rocks or run around the straight path to the shoreline through the thicket. I'm treating this as the scrambling over the jagged rocks is athletics or a strength check, and then option B is like a nature and intelligence check. And then so basically I'm going to go to each one of these things, I'm going to choose my route, and then I'm going to roll a d6 to choose whether that pathing is easy or difficult, and then the ability checks after that will give me unit movements towards 50 based off of whether it was harder or easy. You'll understand. Let's just get into it. As the first juvenile howls, it signals that the race of the summit has begun. Just behind him, the wolf pack is starting to assemble at Unit 0. So the initial path, it can either use athletics or strength to scramble over the jagged rocks, or they can use nature intelligence, survival if they want to try to get the straight path towards the shoreline. Because he knows that he has to fill up the water skin with some water from these pools. So Ziggy takes a look at the rocks, he takes a look at the thicket going around the rocks towards the shoreline, and he decides that the best thing to do is to just jump over these jagged rocks. He rolls a 16, and that allows him to move up his position 3. So Ziggy's boots scrape moss and roots, sliding slightly on the slick stones, and the pack howls behind them, their voices low and primal, the undergrowth swayed with life all on its own. Treegor twisted his root subtly, tipping the first wolf. Each root was a conductor of the forest's will, bending the pack's instincts with a quiet inevitability. So Ziggy is able to jump up on this rock pretty easily with that first roll, but the second roll was only a 5. And this only allows him to move 1 more unit. So he's trying to get up over the rocks, and maybe he's like slipping down the face of the other side of it. And the wolf pack starts tearing at the roots that Treegor has placed in front of them, and they're able to make 1 unit forward. So Ziggy hops across the slick stones at the pond's edge, moonlight scattering across the water. Rolls a 17 with this +2 speed bonus, that's a 19, that's a really good success. And we get positioning to 11. So we make it to the shoreline over the jagged rocks, and we know that our next step is to harvest with this water skin some of the water from this pool. And we see that there's 2 choices. The shoreline water collection milestone. They can either use perception or wisdom to try to look for, a dripping rock or a clean stream off of the face of the rocks, or they can use Constitution to straight up wade out into the water, burden the freezing coldness and numb legs, slipping, all that. So Ziggy's gonna just choose to wade out into the cold water and dip in the water skin to fill up half of it. I rolled the d6 to determine whether that's a difficult or easy choice, and I get 2. So that makes it a hard choice. So if I roll success, I get more units of distance forward. Did I clarify that earlier? Maybe I'll just show that on the screen now. The roll outcome thing. So Ziggy wades out into the pool, and it's colder than he thought. It's much colder than he thought. So he rolls a 4, and the wineskin starts to fill up a little bit, but it's not going as quickly as he would have wanted, and he's starting to get cold. At this point, the wolves have gotten completely through all the branches and they start to gain some progress forward. Treeger starts to regroup a little bit, does nothing to negate the wolves this time, so they move up to... They're gaining on Ziggy. Ziggy's still in the pond trying to fill up this water skin. So Ziggy's able to roll a 10, covering his final 3 distance. The water skin gets completely filled up, and he starts to make his way out of the pool back to the shoreline. Back to the base of this bridge. You can see this bridge moving up to the next second level of the grove. After they finish their collection of the water, they can either choose to use dexterity to climb up the outcropping of mossy rocks and kind of the natural face of the wall, or they can use acrobatics to try to climb up this ladder here. They'll need acrobatics because at the end of the ladder there's a little mossy part that they have to clear over to get on top of the boulder. Second level of the grove has darker bluer waters, and in the center of the pool up there is the great Fey tree that rises from it. Ziggy's gonna have to make his way up the ladder and then decide whether he wants to try to once again wade out into these cold waters or make his way around to find the bubbling brook at the top of the waterfall. At this point, the wolf pack is starting to gain a little confidence within their formation, and they pick up a little bit of a scent on Ziggy, and they advance 1 unit. So Ziggy's now at unit 15, and we have our next milestone choice to make. We see a ladder that leads up to a big boulder in the foot of the pond, and then we also see at the side that there's some mossy stones that we can kind of use as a staircase if we want to. So Ziggy sees the ladder, he's at the foot of it already, and he thinks that this is the best way up. The only issue will be navigating the boulder at the top, but it shouldn't be a terrible issue. So he chooses that one, rolls his d6, gets a 5. So this is going to be the easier choice in the pathing, so we don't get as big of a benefit in terms of movement, unit movement, but Ziggy then rolls an 18 and is able to easily make 3 units up this ladder and get to the top to try to navigate getting over the mossy little bits of rock and the boulder at the top. The wolves did pick up the scent from before, but they weren't able to make any more progress because Treeger also is standing at the foot of the shoreline and he's trying to just impose them. There was one wolf that started to sneak back behind the waterfall, and a few of the other wolves of the pack of 5 juveniles were starting to form a little bit more of a pack, but Treeger is able to hold them off and keep them at unit 6 for turn 6. Now the Alpha is still up on the bridge. He is harnessing power from the eclipsing moon, and the cultists did make their way up on top of the mossy plateau and have presumably started their ritual to harness the eclipse energy and summon a fire serpent for the cult of the dragon that we've seen little teases of throughout this adventure. Treeger knows that the alpha wolf does not want to be disturbed by the juveniles, but he also knows that if the alpha wolf is able to reconvene with the juvenile pack, that they will get mutated and probably receive a little bit of a bonus in terms of organization and movement. So there's a few things that are being juggled right now. There's also still the draconic guard hiding in the quarry, but they were specifically instructing the cultists to do the ritual as they were going to stay in the base. So Treeger's not too worried about that, and Ziggy gets to go about doing his ascent up this grove. So on turn 7, Ziggy rolls an 18, and that allows maximum distance. So he's able to quickly scramble up over this last bit of ladder, and he's now sitting at the base of the heart tree pond. The wolves have a full grasp on the scent of Ziggy, and they're aware they have to go up onto the second level of the heart pond. They're snarling and angry and approaching Trigor, but they roll really low. They roll a 2. So they only advance 1 space to 7. So at the foot of this heart tree pond, knowing that he needs to fill up the second half of this water skin, he has to now make a decision. They can either once again use Constitution and wade out into the deeps of the water, or they can use Dexterity and Sleight of Hand to kind of like make their way along the slippery riverbank, and then to collect from the waterfall without losing the wineskin. And this time he decides that his whole entire torso is already pretty soaking wet and it wasn't too enjoyable, so he's just going to make his way along the babbling edges to the start of the top of the waterfall. And I roll my d6, get a 5. So these are the easy. I don't know if I've been consistent with that, and I apologize if I haven't. It's the first time I've run this, and I'm going to be adjusting some of the rules if I ever run an invasion thing again like this. But I wanted to try it out, so this is what we got. Ziggy makes his way along the babbling brook and gets a roll of 7, advancing only 1 to Unit 22. As Ziggy makes his way into the babbling brooks of the heart tree pond, the alpha wolf above recognizes that somebody is in the grove, potentially disturbing his ritual, and he lets out a large howl. This excites the juveniles below, and they get ravenous for a moment. They're able to roll a 17 and get 3 movement. Nothing Trigger can do about this. Trigger just simply sticks with the pack, knowing that if they make it up to the heart tree pond and stop Ziggy from getting the next bit of water, then Ziggy will not be able to douse the flames on the plateau above. And the wolves are now standing directly at the shoreline at Unit 10. The waters of the heart tree pond were absolutely gorgeous, blue, luminescent, and Ziggy knew to kind of take it slow along the banks because the rocks were super slippery, and yeah, so he rolls an 8, moves up 1 more unit to 23, and the wolves are starting to really want to get a snap or a bite at Ziggy, but Trigger's able to fend them off using druidic, maybe phasing moonlight off of the waters at the shoreline and kind of confusing them, so they're stuck there a little bit mesmerized, and the wolves remain at space 13 for the turn. Ziggy made his way pretty much well across the most slippery parts of the rocks, and he knew that the next step was just basically to dip the water skin in the water and fill up the rest of it. Rolls an 18, does this pretty successfully, moves up to Unit 26. The wolves are still completely mesmerized by what's going on with Trigor and Trigger's influence, and they remain at 13 again. Trigger's just completely distracting them, they can't do anything about it. So on turn 11, Ziggy kind of realizes he has to go up to the bridge and confront this alpha wolf no matter what happens. He's got his water skin fully secured, and he knows that the third step to having this water be properly attuned to stopping this ritual is he needs to actually go utilize the moon orb. So with the 13 roll, he makes it up to space 29. Basically, the next move that's made is going to be dealing with this alpha wolf. The next set of milestones, the party where Ziggy can try to scurry up the ladder as fast as they can up this little like roof or they can use like charisma or performance to try to get the wolf's attention in a positive manner. There's a few things we can do in this evasion thing. We can use one of our spells or player traits or whatever it may be. So we're going to attempt to. The wolves are still just being completely mesmerized by Trigger down at the shoreline, stuck at the base of the ladder at unit 13. So in turn 12, Ziggy decides that he needs to try to charm this alpha wolf. Instead of like completely just invoking a rage, because the alpha werewolf is actually a pretty sentient, intelligent creature. It's not just completely ravenous like the juvenile pack is. This being is wearing what looks like a kimono, like a torn red kimono, silver lustring metallic fur, clearly under the effects of the eclipsing moon and the ritual. So Ziggy decides that instead of trying to attack this thing, because it's most certainly way stronger than him, he's going to try to pull out the poet and mesmerize the wolf to see if we can befriend him or just attract him away. Who knows? Let's see how this ends. Okay, so I roll a 1, and so Ziggy's strumming the poet, singing a melody of peace, and instantly the alpha's ritual is disturbed. He's like absolutely furious. Ziggy totally read that wrong. He thought the being would be peaceful. He takes a leap at Ziggy. Ziggy's able to get out of the way, but what this critical fail does is it basically initiates the juveniles bonuses right away. So they get to roll a D100, they get a pack mutation, and we'll consult our chart. We roll a 41. They roll 41, sorry, the alpha rolls a 41, and this causes them to have luminescent fur, so they glow from 10 feet away, like neon radioactive glowing wolves, and they can't hide in any combats or situations. But also having the alpha regain their pack, they now gain another movement dice, so that critical fail was interesting timing there. Instead of having to deal with the wolf pack just gets a bonus, essentially pinching in the race quicker. Ziggy still has to make his way over to the moon orb to purify this water, and then he needs to make his way up the mossy plateau and confront the cultists. Trigger, at this point, cannot confront or stop the wolf pack anymore because the alpha is now present with them. So Trigger makes his way up to the moon orb to help with the ritual purifying, and yeah, so the wolves are still making progress. They are stoked to be absolutely glowing neon, and they make some more progress. They make 3 more movement progress up to unit 16. They're now up the bridge, or starting to come up the ladder. I don't know if we see that in the models, but that's what they're doing. They're regaining with the alpha. Alpha's trying to like sort them out and all that. And so Ziggy's next roll, and this is where it gets kind of funny because we just rolled the 1. This all legitimately happened. Ziggy has to decide how he's going to cleanse this water, and it's pretty straightforward. The moon orb is already there, it's spinning, it's doing its thing. So he rolls his d6, gets a 6, and that kind of, I don't know. Like I said, we're reworking these rules as we do this, that's why we're doing this. I roll then the d20 and I get a critical 20. So I get max movement, advances Ziggy 5 units through this milestone, and the water's completely cleansed and purified, ready to go douse some ritual fires. Go douse some cultist flames. As for the critical roll bonus, I'm giving Trigger an opportunity to roll from his buff table that we haven't talked about. So once we get up to the plateau, we don't have to make any more advancement forward, so we can choose to roll against a buff table that will either give us a buff or a debuff, And since I got this critical 20, I'm going to allow Trigger to roll. And I roll Trigger's dice, and Trigger gets a 20 as well. So that means we actually do get to consult our wolf table. I don't know if that was clear. Basically, I was saying, since I got the critical roll, then Trigger got a chance to roll the d20 to see if we get a success for the buff, and then Trigger got the natural 20 as well, which is kind of crazy. Roll against the Trigger D100 chart thing, and we get a 21. And a 21 is a distracted mind. So Trigger's able to throw out a druidic kind of speechcraft over the valley, like a charm, and this falls over the wolf pack. They have distracted mind. They get no bonus actions or reactions for the first 3 rounds of the next combat. But like I said, the wolves get 2 dice at this point. They roll a 9 and a 4. That advances them 3 spaces to 19. So Ziggy now has to decide if he wants to just like climb up this little ladder that's on the side to get to the plateau, or if he wants to use the staircase there, the silver obsidian stone ancient grove staircase. Plateau covered in moss. There was a stone circle with a fire burning in it. The moon was still eclipsing overhead, almost at completion. There was the female cultist and the male cultist, attentive to the fire, chanting and doing somatic kind of hand signals, casting a ritual. And Ziggy could either use athletics or strength to try to just muster his way up these steps, these obsidian steps leading to the plateau, or he can use stealth or dexterity to climb up the ladder. But he chooses, let's just use these stairs, let's just get straight up to it. The cultists aren't really paying attention. He knows that once he gets to the top, he has 3 options. He can either try to engage the cultists, persuade the cultists, or just straight up leap with the water towards the fire to douse the flames. So Ziggy rolls a 7, and he starts making his way up these rocks, and he makes it to unit 38. So he's making his way up the side of this pretty easily, and the wolves are gaining ground. They roll a 19 and a 15, moving them from 19 all the way to 25. So Ziggy just musters the strength and continues to make his way up these rocks. Rolls a 14 and is able to make his way up into the mossy plateau, and he's now face to face with these cultists. And the wolves, they are completely invigorated. The eclipse is now coming to full totality, and the alpha rolls a 20 while the wolves themselves roll a 17. They're able to make up 9 spaces, so they're now at 34. Really getting close to Trigger and the group here. So at this point, Ziggy basically just has to make that decision, the fork option. Is he going to roll 1 or 2, which is to just absolutely try to douse the flames with the waters? Is he going to roll a 3 or 4, which is to try to intimidate the cultists? And a 5 or 6 is to, I think, try to engage them. But he rolls a 1. So Ziggy tries to just make a leap and douse the flames, which he does this. Ziggy rolls a 14. I don't know if we covered that before or whatever. But yeah, so at this point, the cultists get to try to retaliate. They roll a critical failure or 1. And this is hilarious how this happens. So the cultists basically just, I don't know if it was the confrontation with Ziggy in the observatory earlier that triggered them, or if they were so magically like drained from performing this ritual, or if they knew they were doing something bad or whatever. Maybe they rolled a 1 and they fleed. One of them fell down the face of the mossy cliffside, and the others presumably fleed to go find the Draco to tell him what had happened. But the serpent still rises. It is unhappy, but it looks dazed. It looks like it's not quite in full form. It's massive, and it's red and fiery and angry, but it's not quite completed. So the wolves now get another roll. They roll 14 and 8. This moves them up to space 39. We take our 1 turn to roll our D100 once again for Treegor, and we roll a 22 this time. And I believe that one is heavy arms. So I think this is also debuff that Treegor's going to throw and cast on the wolves. So from the moon orb, Treegor's looking down at the tree pond. He sees this wolf pack. They're glowing bright neon green, and they're all snarling, and they're with haste making their way towards the mossy plateau. So Treegor touches his hand to the axe that's on his head, or embedded in his head, and he simply just stomps his stump leg into the ground and says, "Heavy arms." Instantly casts out this aura around the pack of dogs and the alpha, where they immediately feel like they're just covered in concrete or drenched in molasses. They are heavy, and this means their melee attacks will be -4 to hit in the next combat for the totality of the combat, unlike the glowing, which will snuff out after 3 rounds of fighting. So this ascent is basically just set up this awesome battle against the serpent, Ziggy, Treegor, and what is now an alpha and 3 wolves. So with Ziggy's final roll being a 9, he covers the distance. He gets to unit 51, and we've determined that there is 12 spaces from Ziggy to the Wolfpack. On our little breakdown here, that basically just says that the Alpha will have 3 wolves present with them for the fight. We know what debuffs they have. The Fire Snake is summoned. I'll probably say this at the start of next episode or whatever, but basically the Fire Snake will roll a d12 each one of its turns. 1, 2, 3, it attacks Ziggy. 4, 5, 6, it targets Treegor. 7, 8, 9, it targets the wolves. And then 10, 11, 12, it targets the alpha. So that will be interesting to do.